Their anger at us. In the meantime, we've taken no position on the issue. I mean, if it seems like a time for U.S. leadership, it seems like the time should be now. But
absolutely, because, you know, the Joint Chiefs of Staff is thinking China might actually go to war with us, or we might go to war with them.
Hi, folks. This is ETprepper. Here we go again, talking about the potential flashpoint for World War III. It may come down to the Spratly Islands. In the 1970s, South Vietnam occupied the Spratly Islands to forestall a Chinese occupation. Troops from Taiwan remained there, and then the Philippines moved forces onto 7 of the remaining islets, built an airstrip in 1976. The United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, which came into effect in the early 80s, established the concept of exclusive economic zones that extend 200 nautical miles from a country's coast. The Spratlys subsequently became considerably more desirable for their potential resources. They've got lots of oil and gas under there. By the late 20th century, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and the Philippines all had conflicting claims to the Spratlys. The United States, which has been the dominant presence in the Pacific region for most of the period since the early 20th century, has not recognized the claims of any country on the Spratlys, insisting instead that the Spratlys are in international waters. China has asserted that its claim to the Spratlys dates back centuries. The Chinese government has stated that almost the entire South China Sea, including the Spratlys and other island groups, is within its sphere of influence. Those claims have been strongly disputed by the Philippines and Vietnam in particular. China first established a presence in the Spratlys in 1988 when its military forcibly removed a Vietnamese garrison from Johnson South Reef. In early 2014, China began intensively building up artificial land on certain reefs and atolls. That activity and China's stronger statements on its claimed territorial integrity in the Spratlys exasperated tensions within the United States, which dispatched a U.S. warship through the region in October 2015. What you're looking at right now is a picture that was taken in 1988, the same time that the Chinese took over, on a hunk of rock, and they built a little tiny hut. Now you can see them building a massive, looks like, military complex on one of those Spratly islands that they manufactured. Here's a picture of a radar installation in the water. Another aerial shot. And then here's a map of showing the oil and gas deposits and the areas where different countries are claiming that they have rights. So folks, the South China Sea is a flashpoint. Take a look at the news clip that's following this, and you can see what I'm talking about.
New information coming out today on China's claims in the South China Sea. The International Tribunal in The Hague ruling in favor of the Philippines. Now, this is significant because they're telling China that there is no legal basis for its territorial claims in the South China Sea. Let's talk to Gordon Chang about it. He's the author of The Coming Collapse of China and also an Asia analyst. Gordon, we've been covering this here on this program, but for folks who don't know, China's been claiming these little rocky shoals and these spits of sand and building up basically a military base, claiming this as land and saying it's their own. So what's the significance of this Hague ruling?
Well, this Hague ruling undercuts all of China's claims, because what they're saying is that virtually all of the South China Sea is international water, and that is inconsistent with China's claim that about 85% of the South China Sea is essentially a Chinese lake. So Beijing must be reeling right now. Everybody knew that the court would rule in favor of the Philippines, but nobody thought that the Philippines would win virtually every single question. And that's exactly what happened a few hours ago.
All right, but is China going to pay attention to the guys at The Hague?
Well, they've already said that they're not going to, they repudiate the ruling, even though they have agreed that to arbitration when they ratified the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea in 1996. They said that the tribunal has no jurisdiction. They're going to completely ignore it. Now, that has put them into opposition with not only the Philippines, but also countries in the region and the United States, because we defend freedom of navigation and the global commons, and China has been infringing that.
Well, one of the things concerning about this is it really ratchets up the tension in the region, but the U.S. hasn't really taken a position on that, and that's where we're good. We're good at taking a leadership position, or at least we used to be. Why is the United States not taking a strong stance on this?
Well, what we do is we do not take a stance on the territorial claims, whether this particular island is China's or the Philippines or Brunei's, but what we do say is we defend international water and airspace, and the Chinese have been infringing upon that for decades. And that is going to be the issue going forward. You know, China is going to react in some way, and we've got the most difficult job in the world, because for an indefinite period, we have got to deter an aggressor that can strike at multiple points, at Scarborough Shoal, Second Thomas Shoal, any number of different pieces of land in the South China Sea.
Well, Gordon, I'm still wondering if the U.S. isn't willing to stand up and say, hey, China, you just can't look at a bunch of sand in the middle of the ocean somewhere and claim it as your own. Think about the repercussions of that. If we don't take that kind of position, I'm still not understanding why we aren't stronger in that, why we don't do that.
Yeah, well, what we didn't do, and this goes to your point, Heather, you know, in 2012, we allowed the China to take Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines, a clear act of aggression. And it was even worse than that, because we brokered an agreement between Manila and Beijing for both sides to withdraw from the shoal. Only the Philippines complied. The Chinese took it over, and we did absolutely nothing, even though we arranged that agreement. And since that time, China's been much more aggressive, not only in the South China Sea, but the East China Sea as well. And that's caused problems all along China's periphery. So, Beijing's becoming much more aggressive.
Yeah, and so I wonder if we're kind of poking, we as the world, kind of poking the sleeping bear, and if now they're going to react more aggressively as a result of this ruling.
Well, certainly, because, you know, I don't know if it's going to be this week, but, you know, they have told their public, they have told the world that the South China Sea is theirs. They have created public markers. They can't walk back from that. And the thing that's really worrying for the United States is that throughout the last several weeks, their propaganda has not been directed against the tribunal. It's been not directed against the Philippines. It's been directed against the United States, because they say that we have stirred up all these troubles in the South China Sea. There never would have been a problem were it not for Uncle Sam. So right now, they have directed their anger at us.
They're directing their anger at us. In the meantime, we've taken no position on the issue. I mean, if it seems like a time for U.S. leadership, it seems like the time should be now. But
absolutely, because, you know, the Joint Chiefs of Staff is thinking China might actually go to war with us, or we might go to war with them in order to protect freedom of navigation. This is the conversation that was overheard in the Pentagon at the end of March by the New York Times. This is extremely serious.
Yeah, it's extremely serious for the United States, for the future other countries, Vladimir Putin, and people are going to be watching this very closely if we do nothing. Also, future generations of our military as well. Gordon Chang, thanks so much for joining us, as always, for your expertise. We'll talk to you again real soon.
These are real scary times, so we should prepare for them. And that way we don't have to live in fear. We can be confident that we're ready for whatever comes our way, and we've prepared as best we can. Take a look at my video here, Ready in 60 Days. It's a challenge. Take the challenge to be ready in 60 days.